in the press conference, he was asked about Matt Canada in terms of, just his overall feeling on him, the offense, were they satisfied? And he was clear in saying that he was not satisfied with the offense. I don't know if you have the direct quote.
Yes, right here. This
okay,
is, I mean,
if you got the direct, I don't want to like shortchange any of it.
Here's the exact quote: "I'm not expressing satisfaction with any component of it. I'm acknowledging that he brings things to the table that are attractive. We need to be better, and we will be. I'm not acknowledging satisfaction with anything we've done."
So that was in response when people were or essentially the reporters were asking about Matt Canada and his job security, and just, has Coach Tom been satisfied with the offense? And I'm not going to lie, I do like the fact that he said he's not satisfied with it. But the part that threw me off, or the part that gave me a little bit more concern, was when he was talking about how Matt Canada is attracted to him, and in terms of, he just simply said, like, yo, he's attracted to me. And then they also went along to ask, I don't know if you have those up as well, when they were talking about why the offense looked the way it did. And they were trying to ask, was it more scheme related or was it more personnel
He said something
related?
about painting the barn red.
Yeah.
Right?
And basically saying, man, when you only have red paint, you have to paint the barn red, alluding to the fact that, Canada's hands were cuffed essentially. Which begs the question, then, are you saying that this was more personnel related and zero to do with scheme, or it was heavily on personnel and the scheme was just, a byproduct of that? That to me was the first disconnect, because when we watched them on tape, we can point to issues. I mean, we brought issues up here on the show where we're like, no, this is schematics related. This is not knowing your personnel related versus, we don't have the talent to accomplish. It's like, no, we have the talent in certain avenues, but if you don't utilize them in the right area, or if you're putting bad people out there, or just putting people out there where they're not going to be their best self, to me, that falls on scheme. To me, that falls on coaching. And when I hear, him saying the whole, you got to paint the barn red, if that's all you have is red paint, I'm like, man, you're essentially taking some of that onus off of Matt Canada with the comment like that. At least that's how I took it.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you on that. It feels like, if anything, a disservice to Ben.
That's like, I'm not gonna lie, that's how I was feeling.
Why I brought up the whole Finkner conversation from last podcast. Like, if this is what the offense was gonna be, if we didn't kind of try to scheme it up for Ben, at least that's how it looked sometimes in the first half, sometimes first three quarters. Dude, just let him run the offense like he did last year, because actually, I mean, we scored.
We did. We would definitely
see from last year to this year, there's a 6-point drop off.
Yeah.
So you saw the line how it was. I mean, Ben got sacked the most this year, whereas last year he wasn't getting sacked.
Yeah.
Like, there was a drop off from the offense last year, as much as people wanted to complain about it and how it ended up until this year. And knowing that you have a guy like Ben coming back, and even how he looked in the preseason and stuff, and you talk about all the commitment.
Because we said that Lions game, was like, bro, he looked good. I told you, even when I was doing the practice reports from training camp, I'm like, yo, I see him when he's out there. He makes the throws he's supposed to make. He still can do this and that. I'm with you, bro. Yeah.
Yeah. So if this was going to be Ben's last season, or either way, you have him on the roster. You have him as your starting quarterback. Like, he's done enough throughout his career. Not only just his Hall of Fame play, but also for the franchise, that you give him the benefit of the doubt. You kind of like give him what he wants, or try to at least tailor the offense around him. But it didn't really feel that way this year.
Yeah, for me, man, it's like, I can understand, like, I definitely hear what you're saying, and I can see for Coach T the part, but I'm just like, the way that comes off from him, like I said, though, it just puts all of the blame on quarterback and personnel.
That's what it sounded like.
And to me, I don't think that that's the case. As I said on Monday, I was like, man, did all of them play a factor in it? Sure. But I can't sit here and say that, Ben's role in this was heavier than Canada's role was heavier than the O-line's role. And then we're going to even react to some of the comments that he made about some of the O-line personnel. And it's like, okay, if you're telling me all you could do is paint the barn red because all you got is red paint, the comment you just make later on in this press conference tells me that you actually had some different colored paint, and you just decided to wait until later in the year to make that switch. So we're going to have to talk about that as well. But as a whole, I just wasn't feeling that, man. Like, where can we point to with Matt Canada especially, and we can just say, hey, you know what, he's had success before at this level? We can't right now. And for me, when I think of that in contrast to Ben, in contrast to the other guys that have returned on this offense that have had success, I'm like, well, if these guys have done it before and he's the only one that hasn't, how do we just take him out of the equation when we don't even know if he can do it just yet? But you're giving him this subtle vote of confidence. And that's the part for me where I'm just like, I don't agree with that vote of confidence right now, man.
No, because now it goes back to why you hired him.
Exactly.
Did you think he was that elite of a talent that he was going to get picked up by some other team? No, that was obviously not the case last offseason. So did you hire him because you were thinking more long-term, like, oh, he could be a coordinator for the next 2 or 3 years? If that's the case, in my opinion, combining him with Ben, that's a damn shame, man.
Yeah.
That's a damn shame because that doesn't really fit with Ben's style. Now, we talked about the potential of it. Oh, man, could Canada scheme it up, him and Ben work together, but obviously that's not how it played out this year.
Yeah. But then I also...
Because it's almost like punting on the season in a way.
Seriously, yeah.
It's like, no, we're signing Canada, or we're bringing him in for the next 2 or 3 years, for the future.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, we have a Hall of Fame quarterback, still a ton of talent on offense, talent on defense. I mean, we thought we were going to have a top 5 defense.
And think about this. What did we say, though, this offseason? We said, man, at times it feels like we're in limbo. Are we committing to this season?
Right.
Or are we trying to hedge our bet for the future? And we said, man, we don't like that because you get caught in no man's land where we're kind of good, kind of not good. We flash, but we're not consistent enough. And when you watch how the season played out, it looked just like that. It's like, man, are we preparing for the future? Or are we trying to win one now? And it looked like an incomplete project from the beginning, and it ended that same way. But the thing that I'm curious about, and obviously none of us are going to have these answers, only Coach Tomlin and Matt Canada, I'm wondering to myself, okay, maybe Matt Canada was coming up to Coach Tomlin and giving him these concepts and saying, you know what, yes, this is what I want to do. I can't do it right now because of this quarterback. I can't. If you're not going to bench him, we got to deal with it. If that was the case, then okay, I can understand what Coach Tomlin's saying. But I just have a hard time believing that was the case right now.
And I think that goes back to what I was saying. That's a disservice to Ben. Like, you can't do that. Like, that's ridiculous.
It's like I said, if and Coach Tomlin also said this, he said that, you know, he's always open to suggestions, but he's only hearing them from certain people that have either played long enough or have coached long enough, things like that, right? And I understand that comment, but I'm just saying to myself, if I am, you know, preparing for a season, if I'm preparing for a game and I'm listening to Canada and I'm listening to Ben, and I have to decide between the two, which one I would err with. I mean, in this sense, why wouldn't you err with Ben if that was the case based off of what he's saying here?
But it didn't look like that because the offenses were completely different. And what people wanted to blame Finkner for a lot last season was that he let Ben run the offense, right? But the offense really did look different. So you can't say... looking at some of these first halves and first 3 quarters that Ben was overruling Canada on everything because there were so many times he's under center. We're seeing the jet sweeps everywhere, all that type of stuff.
Yeah. So for me, man, I didn't agree with that, but more so, we'll just leave it out there to the chat as well, man. Are y'all comfortable with Matt Canada going forward? Because it does come off like Coach Tomlin is comfortable with Matt Canada going forward. And that's the part for me. I'm just like, okay, if you're telling me that, you know, personnel wise, you only had one style of paint. Well, have you looked at Mason Rudolph and Dwayne Haskins? Are they more athletic than Ben? Sure, but they still are very much in the Ben vein.
They're not Lamar Jackson.
That's what I'm saying. So it's like, you can't tell me that you believe that one of these two guys can emerge. But yet, the reason why the offense looked the way that it did was because of, you know, you only had one color paint and we couldn't make any adjustments and we know what Canada wants to do. It's like, how are these two things working like that? That's why, once again, I just say to myself, like, I don't like that response because it feels like you put it all on 7 when in all actuality, it's more than that. And it's no way you can put all of this on 7 knowing that Mason and Haskins are the exact same style of quarterbacks. Younger, yes. A little more athletic, yes. But like you said, they're not Lamar Jackson. They're not going to come out here and start zone reading and things like that.
No, at the end of the day, pocket passers.
Yeah, so it's like, if you knew this was the personnel that you had, well, why'd you go with this coordinator? Why'd you promote him? He was already on the staff. You already knew what his scheme was going to be. Why would you promote that if you know that that doesn't fit with your personnel? Once again, this is why I have an issue. Like, we talk about criticizing. This is what we're talking about right here. Like, that decision, I don't agree with.
And that's the thing I've talked about too in the past. At the end of the day, where are you seeing like these pure college quarterbacks win at?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you want to talk to Deshaun Watson and his dynamics. But at the end of the day, he's still like a pocket quarterback. Mahomes,
yes.
He's dropping back and passing.
Mm-hmm.
The mobility comes into play when they have to.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers, Tom
Josh
Brady.
Allen's another
You're
example.
seeing exactly. You got to have the arm. You got to be able to drop back and pass. And knowing that, we could have still won with Ben.
Mm-hmm.
And if Canada, this is all speculation, if Canada is set in his system and is not willing to expand it more to maybe a little bit more of what we've seen with Finkter, where Ben's in shotgun and
or
he's kind of running stuff. I don't know how to phrase it exactly, but you kind of get what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
That's an indication on Canada, because how many great coordinators can mix it up for both? I mean, we see Harbaugh as a coach over with the Ravens. I know he's not necessarily calling the plays, but I mean, they've completely switched up their system for Lamar Jackson. They went from Joe Flacco to Lamar, and they made the playoffs with it.
And those dudes are night and day in terms of just approach, ability, style, like everything. So, yeah, it's out there. But Roman is also a higher end guy. And that's part of the thing we talk about. It's like Roman, he's had success in the NFL. He's coached in the Super Bowl. Like, he's done this at this level. Whereas with Matt Canada, we haven't seen him have success at this level. The only success he's had is in the collegiate level. And then when you really dive into it even more, so it's like, man, your best years were ACC years, but it's like, we know of the Power Five, the ACC isn't the SEC. You know what I mean? It's not like, it's not viewed as the Big Ten either. So you have a lot more reasons to be skeptical about Matt Canada's transition being successful and being able to sustain that success at this level, because we have not seen him do it when you're comparing him to other coordinators at the NFL level right now.
You see the comments from Dulac that we brought up too, where Collinsworth is like, oh man, why didn't they run this offense the whole time? We're having some success late in the game.
Definitely saw that.
And then Dulac says, you know what? Ben said, screw these plays. I'm running my own offense. We get a couple touchdowns. And he even said emphatically too, he's like, trust me on that. So there are a lot of signs pointing to like Ben didn't have the complete automation of this offense like maybe he has in the past, which is frustrating, which is really frustrating to me.
Yeah. But it goes back to, they did it halfway. They didn't want to fully commit to the whole last ride. They didn't want to fully commit to the future. And this is why it looks the way that it does right now. I mean,
I don't know what the difference it makes in terms of bringing in a coach that fits in Ben.
Well, no, it does make a difference, because
whereas I was going to say, like I get the whole cap situation with players, because that could stymie you a little bit. But if you have a coach with Ben, then you could just like cut the coach and then start fresh.
Yeah.
Am I wrong on that?
No, I'm with you on that.
The players, I get it, because that cap rolls over.
That's why we said what we said. They didn't commit to either. Because like you said, you have Ben, so why not get a guy just for Ben, at least for this season? If you don't like it, you cut, smooth, go on to the next guy next year. Or if he comes in and you're like, I like what he did, okay, you keep him on board for whoever you have next year, because you still have two quarterbacks on the roster who, when we talk about Coach Thomas' comments, you still feel high about those guys. So it's like, why wouldn't you want to have that transition right there? But they never committed to it. They never did, man. And this is why the results
because
are
I
what
think
they are,
personnel-wise, actually, outside of offensive line, we were pretty much built still to win now.
Oh, no. We
got screwed with Tuitt and Alualu.
Yeah.
And then we expected Bush to make the jump.
He took a step back.
We traded for Schobert. It just didn't work out. I do think for the offseason, we towed that nice line of still building for the future, because we still kept all of our cap space. We brought in some veterans, hoping Devin Bush takes the step. We're expecting Tua to be there, Alualu. Like the defense, I'm not kidding. We were supposed to be a top 5 defense. It really didn't turn out that way. But it was really the offensive line. Yeah. You were just hoping that, at least I was, that the young movement, we were going to be at least better than last year.
Correct.
At least better than last year. But that wasn't the case. So that's the one main criticism I would say in terms of personnel is the offensive line. But then we could bring up coordinators in the coaching. Now, I mean, after the fact, if this is how it's going to come out like that, with Tomlin talking about, basically, you're right, almost taking some of the blame off Canada.
I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't off when I was reading that.
I'm telling you, it was frustrating to hear, because,
like I said, I read the quotes, I listened to the quotes. I'm just like, bro, like, are you really minimizing his role right now. Like, I get it if you're going to keep him on the staff, but dude, like, we got to have some type of accountability. Like, you can keep him on the staff and still hold him accountable. Like, I don't think those two things are mutually exclusive. But with what he was saying yesterday, it was almost like a public, I'm drawing a blank on the word for it, but almost like, hey, man, I like what I saw from him enough that, yes, I want to reward him by keep him back. Bring him back next year. Like, that's what it felt like.
Seriously, it felt like it wasn't his fault. This is what he had to work with.
And I guess my other question to you is this, and in the chat, y'all can put that in there as well. Why is it that the Steelers operate with this mindset of we don't fire coaches, and they will hold that with them to the grave, even if a coach is underperforming? But with players, they don't operate like that. We've seen them have free agent signings where, all right, 1 year, Mark Barron, it doesn't work out. Okay, move on. 1 year, John Bostic, doesn't work out. Move on. Morgan Barnett. It's like, why do we feel like we have to be locked into these coordinators or these coaches when we see at times they're underperforming? Whereas when it's player related, we're always like, yo, we got to make some moves. Why is, like, if anything, it would make more sense to do it with the coaches, because you don't have the rippling effect of once you cut the guy and having the dead money on the cap.
Yeah.
That's the part for me where, once again, I'm like, if we're talking criticism, we're talking, things that they need to be addressed on, these are some of the things that we're talking about right here, man.
My question is, who's making the decisions for coordinators and coaches? I didn't know. But now it seems like Tomlin.
Yeah. Yes.
I thought, Tomlin might have his hands tied behind his back, where just like the management, the ownership wants to hire in-house. But from the sounds of it, it's like Tomlin has these decisions.
Yes. Well, because you got to think, it is his staff. You know what I mean? So, like, in that avenue, he does get the lion's share of the say. Now, obviously, Kevin Colbert, Mr. Rooney have to sign off on it and stuff like that. But yeah, trust me on that. Like, they get to pick their staff. That's one of the reasons why when you ever talk about regime change, it's always awkward if a coach might have just resigned. Like when I went to Arizona, for example, we had Steve Wilkes come in. So he was the new coach. He had his staff that he wanted. We still had Larry Foote out there because Larry was still signed under contract from under Arians. So you get this awkwardness of, man, I wanted to hire all my guys, but because the GM had already signed this dude before I got there, I got to deal with him. Most of the time, that doesn't happen. Most of the time, is the guy comes in and he gets the full gamut of whoever he wants to pick, and he can change that whenever he wants to as well. So that's why, once again, I bring up the question of, why do they feel like they got to operate with this? We don't make mistakes when it comes to our coaches, but we make mistakes when it comes to our players. Like, if we're trying to win a championship, why aren't we doing everything to try to win that championship? And if it means finding higher end talent from the coaching staff, especially if at times personnel might not be what you want, well, yeah, if personnel isn't what you want, then the onus on coaching goes up even more, because you're going to have to find guys that can get every bit of talent out of these guys. So for me, it's just like, I don't understand this thought process that they're operating with.
No, I have no clue. Now, obviously, I was higher on Ben coming into this season than you, but you even said we can still win with Ben.
Yeah, absolutely, you can still win with them.
And we just showed this year. I mean, the broken down team, just dysfunction everywhere, and we get into the playoffs 9-7-1.
Yeah.
Just imagine if Ben had who he wanted at offensive coordinator, or maybe that's not the right way to phrase it. Or maybe we got someone that was more tailored for Ben, more experience, whatever the hell it is, who could design, almost like Haley, because you could go the Haley approach, where you bring in someone from the outside like Doug Peterson, who sees things and is like, all right, from last season with Finkner, we're not doing this anymore, but I'm tailoring this to you. Or we have someone like Finkner.
Yeah, very true.
I think it could have been a lot different this year. It's a damn shame.